Ryan Wilson yesterday, he made a comparison. He said the Browns, he says they're better than your average team. He says if they had C.J. Stroud, he'd be picking them. Was it a playoff team, 10, 11 games? Here's Ryan Wilson with us on the show yesterday.
I've been saying this since the draft, but if you took this team, you put them in Houston and gave them C.J. Stroud, they're winning 10 or 11 games. But the team on paper is great outside of the most important position. So if you told me C.J. Stroud was their quarterback, I think they're in the mix to win the division.
Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be one of the NFL's most fascinating teams heading into the season. Depending on who you ask, they're either a quarterback away from becoming a legitimate playoff contender or a team with far more questions than many people want to admit. That debate heated up recently when CBS Sports analyst Ryan Wilson made a bold statement about Cleveland's roster. Wilson argued that if you took the Browns' current roster and simply inserted Houston Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud into the lineup, Cleveland would instantly become a 10 or 11-win team and a serious contender in the AFC North. It's a statement that sounds simple on the surface, but it raises a much bigger question. If the Browns are truly a quarterback away, what exactly are they a quarterback away from?
He was on with us yesterday. You can hear that interview, 923thefan.com. Louis Riddick, former NFL front office member Louis Riddick. He was on Get Up. He talks about the Browns QB situation. Here is what Louis Riddick had to say about it.
Andrew Berry has really set this football team up outside of quarterback to where they have some really good pieces and they can really challenge to win some games this year. They just need competent quarterback play. I wouldn't care who it comes from because, quite honestly, I have the firepower in terms of draft picks to get both of them out of there next year if they aren't good enough. That way, I would look at this very, very much so down the middle and very neutral.
I'm not sure if it was Rodney or Mike. They went after Jimmy and said, well, this team, why aren't we prioritized winning? I got two guys who I do respect saying that we're a QB away. And Lyman goes, a QB away from what? Well, go ahead and answer your own question that you asked, because I wrote it down and go, oh, let's do that on the air. Go right on ahead.
Well, the reason I asked the question is I kind of feel like in the NFL, every team is a quarterback away from making the playoffs.
Are they a quarterback away from making the playoffs? A quarterback away from winning the AFC North? Or a quarterback away from becoming a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Those are very different levels of success, and understanding that distinction is what makes this conversation so interesting. The case for Cleveland being a quarterback away. Ryan Wilson isn't alone in his assessment. Former NFL executive and ESPN analyst Louis Riddick recently echoed a similar sentiment. Riddick praised the work general manager Andrew Berry has done constructing the roster and suggested that Cleveland possesses enough talent across the board to compete immediately.
Like, isn't that the case?
But isn't that still an accomplishment to be able to be a playoff team consistently? Isn't that what they mean by you're a QB away? Like being a consistent, not like, hey, you were a really good story. Because we all respect Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco was great with you and I and Owen and everybody. Like, there's a great deal of respect and admiration for that man. But I think going back to 2023, we all understood that this isn't going to last forever, and we need to make the most of this situation, and then let's have fun with this. Because of the circumstance, right? You were a QB away.
According to Riddick, the Browns have assembled quality pieces throughout the roster. The defense remains talented. The skill positions have potential. The coaching staff has experience. The foundation exists. The missing ingredient? Consistent quarterback play. Riddick's argument is straightforward. If Cleveland receives competent quarterback play, they can challenge opponents and win games. If they don't get it, the rest of the roster may not matter. It's difficult to disagree with that logic. Quarterback remains the most important position in sports. Every season proves it. Teams with high-level quarterback play typically find themselves in playoff races, while teams struggling at quarterback often spend January watching from home.
And he proved you were a QB away. And then he had to go, and then we saw what happened. And it hadn't been good ever since. So I think that's what we mean by when we say you're a QB away. You're a QB away from actually being a contender. But you did have another point to that, even when it comes to Joe Burrow.
Well, sure, yeah, that's the one example where you rarely get above average to elite quarterback play in a team that doesn't make the playoffs or is not good. The Cincinnati Bengals are the one team.
That reality is what fuels the belief that Cleveland could quickly become relevant if the quarterback situation stabilizes. The Joe Flacco example. Perhaps the strongest evidence supporting the quarterback away argument came just a few years ago. In 2023, Joe Flacco arrived in Cleveland under unusual circumstances. Expectations were minimal. Most viewed him as a temporary solution. Instead, he helped ignite one of the most memorable stretches Browns fans had seen in years. The offense suddenly became explosive. The team found momentum. Cleveland reached the playoffs despite battling injuries throughout the season. For many observers, Flacco's performance served as proof that the roster itself was capable of competing. The Browns weren't perfect. They weren't dominant, but they were good enough.
That kind of bucks that trend. I don't know. Maybe go back and look at the Andrew Luck years where he was getting beat up so bad, but it's very rare. Normally, if you get good quarterback play and your quarterback is healthy, you make the playoffs. The one example that I bring up every year is the Houston Texans. The Texans have been to the playoffs 9 times in like 16 years, and they've done it with all sorts of quarterbacks. Like, it's not even one quarterback over the years. I think there's 4 different quarterbacks here that I have that have played well enough for them, or they've been carried to the playoffs.
Flacco demonstrated what happens when a quarterback position provides stability and production. The rest of the team elevated around him. That playoff run is why many analysts continue to say Cleveland is a quarterback away. They've already seen evidence of it. The roster reached the postseason with veteran quarterback play. Why couldn't it happen again? But is every team a quarterback away? Here's where the conversation becomes more complicated. One counterargument is that almost every NFL team could make a similar claim. After all, what team wouldn't improve dramatically by adding a top-tier quarterback? If you inserted Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, or Justin Herbert on most NFL rosters, their outlook would immediately improve. That doesn't necessarily mean those teams are championship caliber. It simply means elite quarterbacks have enormous value. That's why some critics view the phrase quarterback away as somewhat misleading.
But it's just kind of funny to me that I do hear that, and I agree. Yeah, Browns are quarterback away from making the playoffs, but I think there are a bunch of teams. Like, I don't think that's a marker for feeling great about everything as a whole, because that just gets you into the playoffs, and then the next year you don't make the playoffs.
See, I do feel that way, and it does sound like it's a consolation prize for a season that we don't think is going to go very well, wins and losses wise.
Making the playoffs and becoming a true contender are not the same thing. A team can reach the postseason and still have major flaws. A team can win 10 games and still be far from competing for a Super Bowl. The Browns must determine which category they actually belong to. How good is the roster really? There's no question Cleveland has talent. The defense has playmakers. The front office has invested heavily in improving the roster. Andrew Berry deserves credit for continuously adding pieces and maintaining competitiveness despite difficult circumstances. However, talent alone doesn't guarantee success. NFL history is filled with rosters that looked impressive on paper, but failed to deliver results. Even Browns fans know this firsthand. Past Cleveland teams have featured Pro Bowl talent, yet still finished with disappointing records. Football is rarely as simple as adding up star players. Chemistry matters. Coaching matters. Health matters. Depth matters. And perhaps most importantly, development matters. A roster can appear loaded in August and look completely different by December. That uncertainty is why declaring Cleveland a quarterback away may be overly simplistic. The C.J. Stroud discussion. Wilson's use of C.J. Stroud as an example sparked significant debate. At first glance, it makes sense. Stroud burst onto the scene and helped transform Houston into a playoff team almost immediately. His rookie season was spectacular and caused many people to view him as one of the NFL's brightest young stars. But football rarely follows a straight path. Last season, Stroud experienced challenges. His production dipped. Houston's offense encountered difficulties. The Texans dealt with offensive line issues and other obstacles that impacted performance. Suddenly, the conversation around Stroud became far more nuanced. The same quarterback who looked unstoppable one season earlier appeared vulnerable the next. That doesn't mean Stroud isn't talented. Far from it. Instead, it highlights an important lesson. Even great quarterbacks need help. The supporting cast matters. Protection matters. Coaching matters. No quarterback operates in isolation. That reality should serve as a reminder for Browns fans who believe simply finding the right quarterback will solve every problem. The offensive line question. One of the biggest concerns surrounding Cleveland remains the offensive line. While there is optimism about several players, questions still exist regarding how the unit will perform against live competition. Training camp evaluations are useful, but regular season football provides the real answers. Can the tackles hold up? Will the interior line generate consistent push? Can the unit remain healthy over a full season? Those questions remain unanswered. And as Houston demonstrated last year, even talented quarterbacks struggle when protection breaks down. Quarterback and offensive line play are deeply connected. A quarterback may elevate an offense, but poor protection can quickly neutralize even elite talent. That's why some analysts hesitate to declare Cleveland a quarterback away. The quarterback position matters enormously, but so do the players responsible for keeping that quarterback upright. How far down the quarterback rankings? Another fascinating aspect of this debate involves determining exactly how good a quarterback must be to transform Cleveland into a playoff team. Most people agree the Browns would contend with Mahomes. The same applies to Allen, Burrow, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and several others. But where does the line get drawn? Would Brock Purdy make Cleveland a playoff team? What about Kyler Murray? Would Daniel Jones? How about younger quarterbacks still trying to establish themselves? Those questions reveal the complexity of evaluating a roster. If only elite quarterbacks can elevate the Browns, then perhaps the roster isn't as complete as some believe. If average or slightly above average quarterbacks could lead Cleveland to 10 wins, then the roster may indeed be stronger than critics realize. Finding that answer is one of the most important evaluations the organization must make. The long-term goal. Ultimately, the Browns aren't simply trying to reach the playoffs. That's the critical distinction. Making the postseason is nice. Winning 10 games is nice. Competing for a wild card spot is nice. But Cleveland's ambitions should be larger than that. The organization wants sustained success. They want AFC North championships. They want to consistently rank among the AFC's best teams. They want to reach conference championship games. And eventually, they want to compete for a Super Bowl. Those goals require more than a temporary quarterback solution. They require a long-term answer. That's why discussions surrounding the quarterback position remain so important. The Browns aren't searching for someone who can merely help them sneak into the playoffs. They're searching for someone who can become the foundation of a championship-caliber organization. Why this season matters. Even if Cleveland isn't a complete team yet, this season remains extremely important. Every game provides information. Every young player gains experience. Every evaluation helps shape future decisions. The organization needs answers. Can the offensive line become a strength? Can the defense maintain its high level of play? Which young players can become foundational pieces? And most importantly, does Cleveland already have a quarterback capable of leading the franchise forward? Those questions won't all be answered immediately. But by the end of the season, the Browns should have a much clearer understanding of where they stand. Final thoughts. The idea that Cleveland is a quarterback away isn't necessarily wrong. In fact, there's substantial evidence supporting it. Ryan Wilson believes C.J. Stroud would make the Browns a double-digit win team. Louis Riddick sees a roster loaded with enough talent to compete if competent quarterback play emerges. History, particularly the Joe Flacco playoff run, suggests there's truth in both arguments. But the larger question remains unresolved. A quarterback away from what? A playoff appearance? An AFC North title? A Super Bowl run? Those are very different destinations. The Browns may indeed be closer than many people realize. Yet they also have questions along the offensive line, roster development, and overall team consistency that cannot be ignored. Finding the right quarterback could change everything. But if Cleveland wants to become the type of organization that consistently competes deep into January, the quarterback position is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. And that's what makes the Browns one of the most intriguing teams in the NFL heading into this season.